The bouquet was still fresh in my hands when my phone buzzed with the text that would change everything. What started as the worst day of my professional life became the foundation of an empire built on my own terms. My name is Mitchell Rodriguez, and until that cruel text message, I was the backbone of Sterling Financial Solutions. Picture this, it's 2:47 p.m. on a Saturday afternoon in downtown Chicago. I'm standing in my ivory wedding dress in the back of Holy Trinity Church, still glowing from saying "I do" to Marcus, the love of my life. My phone buzzes. A text from Sophia Sterling, my boss's 28-year-old daughter who'd been making my life hell for 4 months. "You're fired. Consider it my gift to you. Clean out your desk Monday." For years I'd built Sterling's entire client relationship system from the ground up. I'd transformed their chaotic paper-based processes into a streamlined digital empire that increased client retention by 40%. Richard Sterling, the company founder, had called me the best investment this firm ever made. Then came Sophia. Fresh out of Wharton with an MBA she wielded like a weapon, Sophia had been appointed as my direct supervisor when Richard decided to step back. Where her father valued my innovations, she saw threats. Where he sought my input, she excluded me from meetings. Where he praised my work publicly, she took credit privately. Marcus appeared beside me, his concerned eyes taking in my pale face. Instead of the outrage I expected, he smiled knowingly and whispered, "Check your messages later, beautiful. Today is ours." How could he be so calm? I'd just lost my position as Senior Client Relations Manager at Chicago's most prestigious financial consulting firm. The career I'd sacrificed everything for, the system I'd built with my own hands. But something in Marcus's steady gaze told me to trust him. So I tucked my phone into my maid of honor's purse and walked into our reception, rose petals falling like snow around us. 3 hours later, during our first dance to At Last, my maid of honor Jessica rushed over with wide eyes. "Mitchell, your phone won't stop buzzing. You have 127 missed calls." The screen showed calls from colleagues, from clients, and 17 from a number I knew by heart, Richard Sterling himself. That's when I realized this wasn't just a firing. This was the beginning of something much bigger than I could have imagined. Let me paint you a picture of who I was before that text message destroyed everything. I'm a first-generation Mexican-American whose parents cleaned office buildings to put me through Northwestern. When my father had his heart attack during my junior year, I nearly dropped out to work full-time. Instead, I doubled my course load while working nights at a 24-hour diner. I graduated summa cum laude with a degree in financial management and a minor in information systems. That unique combination caught Richard Sterling's attention 4 years ago. Sterling Financial Solutions was drowning in inefficiency when I arrived. Client files scattered across 3 different systems, communication gaps that lost them millions, and a retention rate that was bleeding their reputation dry. Richard hired me to fix it all. I designed what I called the Sterling Navigator, a proprietary client management system that tracked every interaction, predicted client needs, and automated follow-ups with surgical precision. The results were immediate. Client satisfaction scores soared, revenue increased by 35%, and suddenly Sterling was the most sought-after firm in the Midwest. I lived and breathed that system. Every algorithm, every shortcut, every failsafe was coded with my personal touch. It was so intuitive for me that I navigated it without conscious thought, but so complex that no one else could use it without extensive training. Training that Sophia had systematically cancelled as unnecessary expenses. I met Marcus during this nightmare period. He worked in the city's business licensing department, a calm, methodical man who actually read applications thoroughly instead of rubber stamping them. We connected over compliance discussions, then coffee dates, then long dinners where he became my sanctuary from Sophia's increasing hostility. What I didn't know then was that Marcus had been noticing troubling patterns in Sterling's recent submissions, specifically the ones Sophia had been handling personally. Documents with altered signatures, backdated filings, suspicious amendments that didn't match original applications. 2 months into our relationship, Marcus proposed with his grandmother's ring in Millennium Park. We planned a small wedding partly because we were practical people, and partly because I sensed my position at Sterling was becoming precarious. I never imagined Sophia would choose my wedding day for her final strike. As our reception continued around me, I excused myself to the bridal suite and finally listened to Richard's voicemails. His voice grew more desperate with each message. "Mitchell, this is Richard. Call me immediately. Sophia had no authority to fire you. There's been a terrible mistake. That was voicemail number 1. By number 17, Richard's usually commanding voice had cracked completely. Mitchell, please. The Morrison account is threatening to leave. The Henderson portfolio review is Monday, and nobody can access your system. The password Sophia thought would work doesn't. We're completely paralyzed. I sat on the edge of a velvet chair, my wedding dress pooling around me like spilled cream, and felt something unexpected, pure undiluted power. For 4 years, I'd built a system so intuitive for me that I navigated it like breathing, but so sophisticated that no one else could operate it without proper training. Training that Sophia had repeatedly blocked, claiming it was a waste of resources. I was the only person alive who fully understood every function, every integration, every workaround I'd built into the Sterling Navigator. And now, on what should have been the worst professional day of my life, I held every card in the deck. Marcus found me there, staring at my phone. He sat carefully beside me, mindful of my dress. I should tell you something, he said quietly. The documents Sophia's been submitting to my department. She's been altering them after legal review. Changing terms, backdating agreements, things that could put the entire firm at risk. My blood turned to ice. That's not just unethical, Marcus. That's fraud. He nodded grimly. I've been documenting everything. I was going to report it next week, but now. He gestured toward my phone, still buzzing with incoming calls. I understood then why he'd smiled at Sophia's text. This wasn't a setback. It was an opportunity. One that removed me from legal liability while simultaneously leaving Sterling helpless without me. What should we do? I asked. Marcus smiled and kissed my forehead. Nothing. Not today. Today we dance. Tomorrow we fly to Maui for our honeymoon. And when we get back. His eyes gleamed with possibility. We'll rewrite the entire game. We returned to our reception, and I danced like a woman without a care in the world. By midnight, I had 247 missed calls. The calls continued throughout our honeymoon week. I sent every single one to voicemail. Maui was everything a honeymoon should be: pristine beaches, perfect weather, and the love of my life beside me as we sipped mai tais and watched the sunset paint the sky in impossible colors. But my phone kept buzzing like an angry wasp. On our 3rd day, while Marcus and I were snorkeling in crystal-clear waters, Richard's desperation reached new heights. He offered to double my salary if I'd return immediately. I deleted the message without responding. 2 days later, he offered me a partnership stake in the firm. Again, silence from me. By day 6, Richard was offering to triple my salary plus equity, plus a company car, plus anything else I wanted. I showed Marcus the message as we lounged on our private beach. You know, Marcus said, watching a sea turtle glide through the turquoise water, there's an opening in the city's financial compliance division. They need someone who understands corporate finance from both sides. Someone who could create new oversight protocols. I turned to him, intrigued. Are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting? I'm suggesting you start your own consulting firm, with the city as your first client. They'd pay handsomely for your expertise in creating systems that catch exactly the kind of corner-cutting Sophia's been doing. The idea took root like a seed in fertile soil. By the time our plane touched down at O'Hare, I drafted a complete business plan on my laptop. 3 days after returning to Chicago, I registered Rodriguez Financial Consulting. My phone rang within minutes of the business registration going public. Richard Sterling. For the first time in 2 weeks, I answered. Mitchell, thank God. We're hemorrhaging clients. The Morrison deal fell through. Henderson is suing us for breach of contract. Please, name your price. I let the silence stretch between us like a taut wire. I'm sorry to hear about your troubles, Richard. But I'm no longer available for employment. I've started my own consulting firm. Then we'll hire your firm. Whatever you're charging, we'll pay double. My first client is the city of Chicago, I said calmly. I'm designing new oversight protocols for financial service firms. The sharp intake of breath told me he understood the implications completely. Mitchell, please, Richard's voice cracked through the phone. Sophia made a catastrophic mistake. She was jealous of your relationship with me, threatened by your competence. Let me fix this. Some things can't be fixed, Richard. Some bridges, once burned, stay ash forever. I ended the call and turned to Marcus, who'd been listening from our new home office. Is it wrong? That felt incredible. He shook his head with a smile. It's not wrong to stand up for yourself. Or for financial integrity. The following week, I began my contract with the city of Chicago. With my insider knowledge of how firms like Sterling operated, I quickly identified massive vulnerabilities in the current oversight system. I created new protocols that would catch unauthorized document alterations, especially financial agreements modified after legal approval. As part of my recommendations, the city launched an audit of recent submissions from major financial firms. Predictably, they found numerous violations in Sterling's recent filings, specifically in documents handled by Sophia. Client agreements with altered terms, backdated contracts, forged signatures on amendment documents. The investigation was swift and damning. Sterling Financial Solutions didn't just lose clients, they lost their operating license. Sophia wasn't just fired, she was criminally charged with fraud. Her professional certifications were revoked permanently. The firm that Richard Sterling had built over 30 years crumbled in 30 days. Through industry contacts, I heard that Richard had been hospitalized with stress-induced chest pains. Despite everything, that news brought me no satisfaction. Richard had been a good mentor before his blind spot for his daughter clouded his judgment. Meanwhile, Rodriguez Financial Consulting thrived. Within 6 months, I had contracts with 5 municipal governments and was hiring staff to keep up with demand. Marcus received a promotion for his ethical whistleblowing. We bought our first house, a gorgeous Victorian in Lincoln Park with original hardwood floors and enormous potential, just like our life together. Then, exactly 1 year after my wedding day, a thick cream envelope arrived at my office with familiar letterhead. The envelope was expensive, the kind of heavyweight paper that whispered of old money and serious intentions. Inside was a handwritten letter in Richard Sterling's distinctive script. Dear Mitchell, it began. Some debts can never be fully repaid, but acknowledgement is the beginning of redemption. He went on to explain how he'd spent the year rebuilding what Sophia's actions and his own negligence had destroyed. Sterling Financial had emerged from bankruptcy under new leadership and strict oversight. Sophia had completed a professional ethics program and now worked at a non-profit, helping small businesses with basic bookkeeping. We are a different company now, he wrote. New protocols, new leadership, new commitment to integrity. I'm writing to ask if you would consider meeting with me, not to return. I understand that bridge is indeed ash, but to consult on our new systems. To ensure we never fail our clients' trust again. The letter concluded, whether you accept or decline, please know that my respect for you has only grown. You were right to stand your ground, right to protect the public trust, right to demand better. I showed the letter to Marcus that evening over Thai takeout in our kitchen. What do you think? I asked. Should I meet with him? Marcus considered it carefully, twirling pad thai around his chopsticks. What would your purpose be? Closure? Vindication? Professional curiosity? I pondered his question, watching snow fall outside our windows. All of those, I suppose. And maybe to see if genuine change is actually possible. Then I think you have your answer. I scheduled the meeting for the following week. When Richard's assistant mentioned he'd requested it take place at Sterling's offices rather than mine, I almost cancelled. Returning to that building felt like stepping backward into a nightmare. But curiosity won out. When I arrived at the familiar glass tower on LaSalle Street, everything had changed. New faces, new energy, new systems visible on every screen. The receptionist, someone I didn't recognize, greeted me with unusual deference. Ms. Rodriguez, Mr. Sterling is waiting in the main conference room. As I walked through hallways that once felt like home, I noticed the transformation was complete. They'd truly started over, built something new from the ashes of what Sophia had burned down. The conference room door stood open. I stepped inside to find not just Richard, but Sophia as well. Richard stood immediately, but Sophia remained seated, her eyes fixed on the polished conference table. The arrogant gleam I remembered had vanished completely, replaced by something I'd never seen in her before, genuine humility. Mitchell, thank you for coming, Richard said, extending his hand. His grip was firm, but his face looked aged beyond the single year that had passed. Stress had carved new lines around his eyes, and his once thick hair had gone completely gray. Your letter was unexpected, I replied, taking a seat across from them. As was the education of this past year, Richard said quietly. But necessary. He glanced at his daughter. Sophia has something to say to you. Sophia finally looked up, and I saw tears threatening to spill from her eyes. I owe you an apology, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. What I did was unprofessional, vindictive, and potentially criminal. There's no excuse for my behavior. Her words sounded rehearsed, but the shame coloring her face appeared genuine. Still, an apology couldn't erase the past or the damage she'd caused. Apology noted, I replied, neither accepting nor rejecting it outright. Richard cleared his throat and slid a folder across the table. This company has been rebuilt from its foundation. New safety protocols, new review processes, new leadership structure. Sophia is no longer in management. She's learning the business properly this time, from the ground up. I opened the folder. Inside was a detailed overview of their new systems, impressively thorough, I had to admit, along with a consulting contract offering a substantial fee for my review and recommendations. We're not asking you to come back, Richard clarified. Just to evaluate our new approach. To ensure we've truly changed. As I scanned the documents, Sophia stood suddenly. There's something else, she said, her voice cracking slightly. She left the room and returned with a small envelope, placing it before me with trembling hands. Inside was a check for exactly the amount of my entire wedding, down to the penny for the last centerpiece. How did you know this figure? I asked suspiciously. Your wedding planner is my sorority sister, Sophia admitted. I asked for the total. I wanted it to be precise. She placed a small flash drive beside the check. This also belongs to you. It's the entire Sterling Navigator system with all passwords and access points. We've managed to create basic functionality, but it never worked properly without you. It's yours to take or delete. I stared at the tiny device, feeling the weight of 4 years' work condensed into something I could hold between 2 fingers. In that moment, looking at these 2 people, one broken by his ethical blindness, the other humbled by the consequences of her cruelty, I realized something profound about revenge. Sometimes it arrives without you having to deliver it yourself. Sometimes the greatest victory is simply surviving, thriving, and watching others reckon with the wreckage they've created. I closed the folder and stood up. I'll review your proposal and get back to you within the week. My fee will be 5 times your initial offer, paid in advance. My team will need complete access and full transparency. Richard nodded immediately. Agreed. One more condition. I looked directly at Sophia. You personally will complete every training module I assign, no matter how basic or time-consuming. You'll learn every aspect of proper financial management, ethical practices, and regulatory compliance. Color drained from Sophia's face, but she nodded. Yes, I understand. Then we might have something to discuss. I gathered my belongings and walked to the door, pausing with my hand on the handle. Oh, and Richard? The check is unnecessary. Seeing your daughter learn the value of integrity will be gift enough. I left them sitting there, the check untouched on the table, and walked out of Sterling Financial Solutions with my head held high. But this isn't where my story ends. It's where the real transformation began, not just for them, but for an entire industry that would never be quite the same again. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction. Sometimes it's reconstruction, but on your terms, not theirs. And sometimes, just sometimes, everyone emerges better than before. If you've stayed with me through this journey, you know that the most satisfying victories aren't about what you destroy, but what you build from the ashes of what tried to destroy you. True power isn't about having the ability to crush your enemies, it's about having that power and choosing a different path entirely.